in these lease purchases, you got folks that are living on advances that are never bringing home a paycheck. I mean, it's ugly, ugly.
Landline Now, welcome back. Tom Crowley joins me now. He is the regulatory specialist in the compliance department at OOIDA. Tom, thanks for coming in.
Good to be here.
Today we are talking about lease purchase agreements. I'm curious, what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear lease purchase agreements?
Bad things. I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is usually, is ripoff too strong?
Nope.
Because most of them out there are a ripoff. Mm-hmm. Most of them have no intentions of the driver ever owning anything. And that's the thing. We get a lot of calls in the compliance department about these lease purchases. And inevitably, when they tell me they're in a lease purchase, I can already tell you most of the time the direction the call is going to go, and it's not pleasant.
Do you cringe? I mean, you've been here for several years. Do you cringe when you hear that?
Yeah, 15 years. Yeah, well, I don't. Not a lot makes me cringe anymore, but because in the compliance department, I mean, we bleed with these folks. They call in and they tell us, how bad things are in certain situations, and as a driver myself, I've spent many years on the road. We do bleed with them, and they, in these lease purchases, you got folks that are living on advances that are never bringing home a paycheck. I mean, it's ugly, and there are so many out there, and the pitfalls. I mean, you got recruiters that do what they do. They recruit, and they talk a hell of a line, but the bottom line is most of them intend on the driver owning nothing.
Now, for those who might be unaware, what is a lease purchase agreement?
Well, I mean, and the whole lease issue, you got lease, and lease. You can lease your truck. If you own a truck, you can lease it with the carrier. That's a lease. We all know you can go to Ryder or Penske and lease a truck from them. That's a lease. And then you got the lease purchase. This is where a carrier, and many times the scenario is a carrier buys trucks, has company drivers. They drive these trucks, say they put, 500,000 miles on them or so, run out the warranty. So then the carrier's got these trucks that are like, what am I going to do with these now? So they start bringing in what they call lease purchase operators. They come in and sign a contract that is many, many, many pages long, written by lawyers in favor of the carrier. And most of the time, the contractor doesn't read it or doesn't fully understand it. I mean, you've got lawyers writing this stuff, and then you've got truckers who, do not probably have the education of a lawyer, reading this and trying to understand it and saying, "Hey, I think this will be all right." You've got a recruiter there saying, "Yeah," patting you on the back, Honest John there, patting you on the back and saying, "Oh yeah, you'll do fine." Then these folks get into these situations and these lease purchases. I mean, I've looked through so many of them and ran the numbers on them. I mean, they literally come down to where there are actually only pennies per mile, maybe pennies per mile going to the driver.
Wow.
And that's if a lot of things don't happen, if the truck doesn't break down. You got the trucks, the company drivers have got all the goodie out of them. Now they want you to buy them or supposedly buy them, pay all the bills on them. I've seen people get into trucks that literally are junk, rolling wrecks. They get into them. The first week out, the truck goes down. It needs brakes. It needs all kinds of just minor issues even. And that driver that just jumped in that truck, they're responsible for all that stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why? I mean, you mentioned but why are these so problematic?
Well, and like I said, it's because when you get into a truck, I bought several trucks myself. When I go to buy a truck, I come up to the truck fairly clean, and by the time I walk away from that truck, I'm pretty dirty because I've crawled all over that truck. I've looked at everything to see, and I got a little mechanical experience, so I can kind of look at it and get a feel for how it's maintained, how it's been taken care of, based on the miles that are on it. Excuse me. Based on the miles that are on it, what the condition it should be in. Many of these drivers that come into these lease purchase situations, they don't get to pick out a truck. A truck is assigned to them, and they just get whatever comes down the road. if you don't get to pick out your truck and take it to a shop and have a mechanic look at it, I don't like buying things sight unseen or getting into situations sight unseen.
Now, I assume these companies who are putting these lease purchase agreements out there, trying to get people to sign up for them, they make it sound good, right? Like they do a good job.
Oh yeah, I mean, they got some of the best recruiters. I mean, they pull folks in, and when you're a truck driver, especially a new truck driver, as I was one once, you kind of have this dream of, man, I want to own my own truck and my own business. I mean, that's the American dream is, to go after your own. They use that. They use a lot of sales tactics, as far as, it's towards the end of the day. We need you to hurry up and sign this. We got to go. We got to get you on the road. You got to get out there and start making money. Who are you going to make money for? That's the thing. The recruiters, they're good at what they do. I think they'll answer for it one day, but maybe not in this lifetime, maybe in the next.
What are some of the most common things? Like you said, you've been here for 15 years. What are the most common things you see when it comes to these lease purchase agreements and the people who call in and ask questions about them?
The biggest thing I see, one of the most prevalent issues that I see, Ashley, is that they get into these trucks and they barely get off the lot and they have problems. In the best situation with these lease purchases, I mean, they're not geared for they're not geared for the driver to make money. They're geared for the carrier. So in the best situation, if you have no breakdowns, no issues like this, maybe you'll make a couple of bucks. Not enough to probably sustain your home life, and not enough to pay your mortgage and your, whatever bills you have at home. But I talk to a lot of folks that get in these that basically live in their truck. They don't have an apartment or a house or a car payment or stuff. Everything they own is in that truck, and they are depending on 100% on that carrier being up front and on the level with them. And it doesn't usually turn out that way. And then suffer one breakdown and you get in the hole, and it's usually a hole that you can never climb out of.
Yeah. What are some other red flags? You mentioned, oftentimes people who are signing up for this, they're like, you got to sign up quick. You want to get making money. We want to get you on the road. What are some other red flags? Obviously, if somebody's rushing you, that's a red flag.
Yes.
What are some other red flags?
The things, there are some of these bigger carriers that do these, and while I would love to throw out names, I'm sure that you would rather I didn't. Some of the bigger carriers that do some of these lease purchases, there are lawsuits out there going on some of these. Check this out. And I know everybody, if you're going into a situation and you don't have any skin in the game, meaning you don't have money for a down payment or deposit, this type of stuff, if you think a carrier, out of the goodness of their own heart, is going to make you an owner-operator, is going to pay all the money to buy that truck and make you an owner-operator, I'm afraid you're going to have a rude awakening coming. They're looking to take advantage of you. People say that, there's no slave labor anymore. I question that. There is definitely almost indentured servitude that goes on with these trucks. And these folks get into these trucks, and they put their heart and soul into it, and they work hard, long hours. I mean, a trucker is expected to work about 70 hours a week as it is. And they work all these long hours. They live on advances. They live on meager existence. I mean, I've talked to people that basically say, if it wasn't for the generosity of some of the other truckers around them, some days they wouldn't eat. And these carriers, they're unconcerned. They're only concerned with their own bottom line. So check out, do some research on carriers. Usually, if you do a little research on the carrier and their lease purchase program, and if you're honest with what you're looking at and you be honest with yourself, you'll see that they're probably not a good option. But people go into stuff idealistic. They only see what they want to see, only hear what they want to hear. And when reality comes at them, it's tough.
Now, I've been in this position for a couple of years, and like you said earlier, we bleed with these people who call in and are in these situations. And I received an email the other day that I did pass on to you, and you responded. And kind of the general situation that person was in, they said they were in a lease purchase agreement. The company said they were drawing up the contracts. They hadn't seen anything yet. They've been paying on the truck. They've been paying on the trailer, insurance. There were repairs, had I think a $1,500 repair bill. And then
Which is cheap.
Which is cheap, yes. And then we're told, because of cash flow problems, they weren't going to be getting paid. And they're like, what do I do in that situation? And what was your response?
Well, a lot of people in that situation, they're thinking there's something legal that they can do. And maybe there is, maybe there isn't. Do they have the money to pursue a legal thing against a carrier? So my response in a situation like that would be more about, you need to really be honest with yourself, evaluate your situation, and see that if you're in a lease purchase and you don't even have a contract, as these folks didn't, that's because this carrier is just so blatantly bold as to they're not even going to go to the formalities, and I use the little air quote thing, formalities of drawing up a contract, because they know that you're not going to own anything and you're out there working your butt off, and it's to the carrier's benefit. So folks like this, I would tell them that, I never tell anybody to abandon the truck. Take the truck back, just because you got DAC reports, you got ways that carriers can screw with you if you abandon their equipment. So get the truck back. But when you show up at the carrier's lot, especially if they're telling you, we got cash flow problems, we're not going to be paying you, you're already living on advances. So what are they going to, make sure you would take that truck back. Don't show up there with a truckload of stuff, your personal stuff, because you'll probably be carrying it out of there. And don't show up there broke, expecting to be paid. I would take enough money at least for an Uber out of there and maybe a bus ticket home. That was something that my dad, when I was first starting out driving, I was going across country, and back then, of course, that was in the 80s. He handed me a $50 bill, and he said, "Keep this. You don't know what's going to happen out there. You might need a ride home." And I kept it for a while.
Yeah, good advice.
Yeah.
If someone does find themselves in one of these situations, or they're thinking about getting into one of these situations, how can OOIDA help out?
So often we don't talk to people till after they're in the situation, and there's not a lot of help then. I mean, it's you're in a bad spot and you need an influx of money and guns and lawyers and all this kind of stuff. That's rough. Call us before you do this, before you sign this, before you take that bus ride to that carrier that's promising you all this crap that's probably not going to happen. Yeah. Call us beforehand. I mean, at least then you will go armed with the knowledge of what it could be. And many times, we've, here at the association, we talk to a lot of people. And we usually have some information on a carrier, especially a lease purchase carrier, and can kind of tell you what that recruiter is not telling you. The actual what it is.
Truth, yeah. Finally, what message do you have for people that you hope they get from this conversation when it comes to lease purchase agreements?
Lease purchases, they promise you everything with nothing down, and that you don't get something for nothing. Now, granted, you'll sweat for them, but they don't plan on giving you much. If you're not putting money in it, if you don't have skin in the game, I think you're foolish to expect that somebody's going to make you an owner-operator. It's just not how it works.
All right. Tom, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
That was Tom Crowley, the regulator specialist at OOIDA, talking about the dangers of lease purchase agreements.